kind of talking about your training, you said a little later on, you didn't get anything up front, but that y'all went to Austin. Was that to DPS? Did y'all go down there to their headquarters?
Yeah, we went to the highway patrol thing there a time or two for some school and way back there, and we never had to go. Any officers, I don't remember us having any inspector schools or qualifying with a revolver or anything had to ever happen to do that, and till and I don't know what year, because that would be after I left the association and before I got back involved in it here at the ranch. Sometime during that period, why it became necessary for you to be qualified with T-close. There wasn't no T-close when I worked for the association, and the Miranda laws hadn't been wrote yet, so there wasn't any Miranda, and you could arrest a guy and haul him around with you, dare to, if you wanted to, and try and find out something that you didn't have to take him before a magistrate in so many hours or anything, and so it was a whole lot different than now, And
after you'd worked a couple of years, Colonel Joe Fletcher came in from DPS to be the general manager and over the Special Rangers. What was that change like?
Well, it shaped everything up. He was a disciplinarian, and a strict officer himself, and he was a good peace officer, and he started, I guess then they started a little more training stuff and giving us a few more instructions, and he told us little things that, you turned in a lot of, this is something I remember, a lot of credit card receipts on that car for that gasoline and stuff, and he says that work report you turn in every week ought to show you was in somewhere in that area, working on something, or you wouldn't be feeling a few little things like that. I remember that he got a little stricter. Up before that, they didn't ever ask you anything about where you was at or what you was doing or anything. They just put you out there, and if you was collecting the dues and getting a member now and then, and there wasn't any major ranches, especially directors, sending them any bad information on you, well, they didn't hardly ever bother you at all, and you did have to turn in a weekly report, just kind of what you done each day, where you was at, or what you was doing, or what you was doing. We had to fill that out and mail them in, and then mail it in with your expense account at the end of the month. But
Colonel Fletcher brought Don King into the office to kind of be his protege and kind of take maybe a lead on the Special Rangers. What was he like to work with?
Don was good, and at the time he was an inspector at Graham. He was just a field inspector and working, and I was in the Paducah area, so we worked together some, and I liked him and knew him well, and was always impressed with him because he was well educated and pretty sharp, and he really made a good field inspector. And then Fletcher, when he come in, he recognized right quick that he was really a good inspector, and that he had a college education, and that he was be good. And so he took him in to help him because he didn't want to be over the day-to-day work of field inspectors. He was running the association, you know. He was a tough hombre, and I've seen him get up to speak in mixed crowds of people and tell them that they'd have to forgive his language because he talked better and got it across better if he cussed a little, and he would use some foul language sometimes when he is up on stand talking somewhere, and he didn't care that somebody didn't like it, you know.
That was Colonel Fletcher?
Right. Yeah, he's a tough hombre. But he didn't last very long. He got that cancer, and I remember going, I wasn't working, I had went back at the ranch, but I went to Temple to see him one time when he was there on his last legs, and they had him in that big hospital at Temple.
When that changed over to Colonel Fletcher and you went down to the Austin to the DPS to train, do you remember any of the kind of classes? What did they teach?
Well, as I remember, and golly, see, that's been 60 years ago, he was, they got a little more involved, like I previously said, in law enforcement, and we were, up until that time, we had been brand inspectors, you know, field brand inspectors, and one of our main duties was to work shipments, you know, and Colonel Fletcher was a professional peace officer, you know, and he got more involved in learning the laws. And I remember an incident where two boys that was released from the penitentiary, and they came up to a field inspector. He was in Snyder. I can call his name if I had to. He had testified against them when they went to jail and went to pen, and they told him, stopped him on the street there and told him that they was sorry the things they said, and they sleeping on that steel cot the last 2 years changed their attitude. Would he take them out there in the country to a farm where they was going to work? And they got out in the country. They pulled him out of there and nearly beat him to death. And Colonel called me to go. They had him in the hospital at Roby. I remember his mouth was beat up and stuff was running out of his ears, laying up there in the hospital. And Colonel told me, and you know they don't do this, and he told me if you can find either one of them guys before that gets out public everywhere, make sure that your story's the only one ever told. But they arrested him later in San Antonio. But he told me that he said, make sure, you know, that's just like telling you to kill them. He said, make sure your story's the only one ever told. And that's the kind of guy he was. And
You said earlier when they gave you a car, I guess, tell us about the vehicles you rode, and I think there may be a story about trading vehicles.
oh, yeah, we all drove cars then. All the inspectors drove cars, and we didn't have an agreement with Ford or Chevrolet or anybody to get them. They just kind of whatever they had for you, and I know one time I was telling you that it was time, me and Alan Jeffries both needed a car, time to trade, and I told Charlie Hodges, who was working in the office, and I didn't know exactly, did you tell me that you read what he had a kind of a job assignment, but he was, to me, a big shot in the office, you know, was Charlie Hodges. And he just told me, I told him I'd met a guy and got acquainted with him, wrote him up a membership. because he had a little bunch of cows that owned a Ford house in Sweetwater and had told me that he'd give us a good deal. So they told me I took Alan and we went down there and drove both of us our old cars down there and traded for two just like black four-door Fords with red seat covers, red leather seat covers in them. They was really nice 62 models. And they told me to just draw a draft of a blank check there on the counter on him and make on the Cattle Raisers Association pay for them. And I paid for both of them cars and we got in them and come home. Now, they had the cars we left there that traded in on them, and it'd be a little more paperwork involved in that now. But we usually drive a car 80 or 100,000 miles, and then it'd take a couple of 3 years, depending on where you're working. And we stayed away from home a lot more. We stayed, it's like I'd pull out of Paducah Monday morning and usually be gone 2 to 3 days before I got back. And I'd stay at Stanford one night and stay at Sweetwater one night when you was down in that country working, whereas 90% of the time now those boys come home, of a night, I think. And I can't speak to that because I don't really know. But
Where did you stay? Did you stay in ranches or hotels or bedrolls?
no, I stayed. I carried a bedroll, and it's like over here at the Pitchforks. I just stay in that old 2-story bunkhouse, roll it out, and stay all night once in a while. But when you stayed in towns instead of motels, like people now, nearly everybody that traveled stayed in a hotel, and they'd have a television in the lobby. That'd be the only one. They was just getting started good, and they'd have a black and white TV in the lobby, and there'd be chairs like this. And you'd go down of a night after you got in and freshened up a little. You'd go down there, and it'd be a group just like this, and you could visit and talk to different. Where a room, you just by yourself, and some of the rooms then would just have a lot of them had a one bathroom on that floor, and you'd have a washpan and a water bowl, a pitcher carried water in them little ones, and some of them like Sweetwater, they had bathrooms in a nice hotel. I stay there. Every week or 10 days, I'd stay all night there in that hotel. It's about $3 or $4 for a room of a night,